Okay, hi guys. We finally got started an hour and 15 minutes later, but you can handle that. Tonight, again, I have Mr. Kevon, and he is going to be chatting with me. I'm going to turn off this little thumbnail and put our image up as soon as humanly possible. We've been having some technical difficulties, so I guess this is just all part of the fun of the technical difficulties. Okay, there we go. Now you can say hello, Kevon.
Hello, people. How's it going? Thanks for having me again.
I appreciate you being here. We got Doc Michael in the house and Jennifer Kiesling in the house. Hello and welcome. And so, why don't you start off the conversation a little bit because you had a couple ideas that we were already talking about, but you can just pick one of them and we'll go from there.
There's the whole rumblings with Jasara Nasara, something that, a whole lot of people are like either confused about or anxious about. Um, in your case, and opposed to it. But I think it's a conversation that, you know, it won't go as like flat Earth, right? Like regardless of what you believe, it's not going to go away anytime soon. But it's very important that we do kind of establish where we are with that, at least individually, and identifying it. And because if I'm wrong about it being the golden uh, or the key to all of this moving forward, um, if I'm wrong, then we got to be prepared. But you know,
So, to explain to people what it is, GESARA is the Global Economic Security and Reformation Act, and I think N was national, but I could be wrong. But this act
yeah,
is supposed to be basically, it sounds really good. It's talking about backing a currency with gold, and by doing so, they want it to be interestingly, a one world currency. And if you were to go up and go to their website and read about it, they even quote Proverbs, which is real smart on their part because they're gonna get all the New Agers and the Christians, especially because Q is pushing the New Age, in my opinion, hold on. I think Q is pushing the New Age, in my opinion, but it's going to hit Christians because Q likes to talk about that. Just one scripture that Q likes to quote, which is Ephesians 6. Q doesn't like to quote anything else but Ephesians 6. So what they do is they make it look really good. And I could be wrong. We're not in, me and Kevon don't argue, but what I do know is that it's a promise of no poverty, no hunger, no debt, and global prosperity. And it does promise a one world currency. Everybody's saying they can't hear me, which is odd because I've turned the volume up, but there might be a delay, and so maybe that's the problem. Anyway, hopefully my volume is up. I'm actually talking straight into the microphone. Let me know if there's still a problem, guys. I can't turn it up much more than it is. But anyway, I'll just finish what I was going to say. Interestingly enough, this would be something that would possibly be utilized by quantum computers. Uh, we're not, I mean, that's kind of what I think Q is as a quantum computer. However, anyway, if one thing we were talking about is if they're going to be able to back a one world currency digitally or whatever with gold and silver, why wouldn't we just go back to gold and silver as a currency?
oh yeah. So that was the alley oop.
Mm.
Um, yeah. So we kind of discussed this earlier, but where I'm at with that is as far as the backing, it's kind of like what we've always been doing. Like we've all just been poor, right? All of us have just had this in our mind. Like the more paper, green paper that I have, the more rich I am than you. But that was just what the Federal Reserve was all about, right? It's literally just there to print money, just no backing, no nothing. You just have it, and you guys just circulate it. Some people keep more than others. Whatever system's in place to pretty much perpetuate this debt slave system. That's what we had, and just to kind of dive a little bit more into what Jasara is, um, it the some of the initiatives is like it zeroes out all credit debt, mortgage, bank debts, and I've actually seen and heard some examples of people uh, I want to say particularly here in the United States, but by this point, not I can't. There's some people who are, going to, the dealership, and they're finding out that they have a credit as opposed to, a charge due. It also abolishes the income tax, and we're already seeing uh, a little bit of that, right, with Trump's most recent initiative. As of right now, it's temporary. That's the grumblings and rumblings, but I think I think that's here to stay. It abolishes the IRS. It creates a 14% flat rate, non-essential new items sales tax for the government. So, in other words, like, food and, uh, just basic necessities, that stuff is not taxed. But then one of the major things, I'm sorry,
Okay.
one of the major things is the return to constitutional law, which something, if I'm going to be completely honest, is something that I still have to wrap my brain around a little bit, because even like just learning that we've lived under a non-constitutional rule for such a my entire life, and confronting, okay, what is the Constitution, and how exactly do we defy it, and how do we return to it? I don't even know what that world looks like. But in addition to all of that, it adds protections to the elections, a new treasury, and just to reiterate a little bit more on the currency, it creates a new U.S. Treasury rainbow currency, backed by gold. Yeah, rainbow, but I guess the concept comes from the gold, silver, bronze, or whatever. And yeah, it ends the bankruptcy of the nation that was, you know, basically kicked off or initiated by Roosevelt back in the 30s.
So I want to read you
I,
something
mhm.
when if you're not done, please finish.
No, yeah, that's fine. I just wanted to run through some of the basic stuff, just for, some of the. Oh yeah, and one more thing is the release of patents. I think they say 6,000 patents for uh, new technology and, medical research, and things of the like, that I think is probably one of the most important. But yeah, go ahead. Yeah, I
So I
want
mean,
to hear what you got to
again, it
say.
sounds great because I have $150,000 in student loans. I'd love to be forgiven. That sounds super good, but at what cost for me? And so if you look
Right.
at the things like the Green New Deal, the clean air, climate change stuff, all of that is about reducing population. If you listen to Bill Gates, he talks about, well, if we're going to have climate change, if we're going to fix it, we have to lower the numbers of our carbon footprint and then the population. He says we need to lower it by a certain percentage, and he can do that with vaccines and women's health, right? So abortions and vaccines will help that, but continually through the ages, going back decades, all these climate change groups want to do ultimately is they want to depopulate. Like Margaret Singer, she says we want to invite people to have less children. Well, if we can't do that, then we'll go ahead and abort them, vaccinate them, and murder them basically. And so with this is part of that continual agenda. And Jasara being I'm going to read this to you. Um, JASARA was voted to be implemented by all 209 sovereign nations of the world per the signed 2015 Paris Agreement on Climate Change, starting with the Restored Republic of the United States, known as the USA, known in the USA as the it is also the NESARA, National Economic Security and Reformation Act, or National Economic Stabilization and Recovery Act. Now that's interesting that it would be called that, because COVID-19 would be a great time to stabilize and recover from something. And so this is where I start going, sounds good, but that sounds unfortunate. So, of course, it says it does away with the Federal Reserve, IRS, like you said, which sounds great too. And it says, listen to this. Why is GESARA necessary? Planet Earth and humanity are experiencing the great shift of consciousness. Very new age. That is so new age. That they believe that only a select few get to ascend into that consciousness. The rest of us don't get to do that. That's going to be a select few. And you can go back to Barbara Marx Hubbard. You can go back to, oh gosh, just name him. Who was the guy that sailed all the time? Oh, I can't think of his name, but he always wore the red like knitted cap and he was always sailing. Anyway, he would talk about it. Any of these climate change groups, they talk about this, that not everybody's going to be able to make it. So this talks about planet Earth and humanity are experiencing a great shift of consciousness, also known as ascension or the Great Awakening. Now, who likes to talk about the Great Awakening is Q. Right? And this is very new agey. Into unity consciousness. Mother Earth is returning to be a sacred planet and is taking the entire human population with her, whoever wants to go. That's a little nugget. It's a golden age beyond our wildest imagination. The Galactic Federation of Light and the Forces of Light have been tasked by Prime Creator Source. Now you're like, who's writing this? This is written more as an opinion piece by a guy named Reverend Dennis Shipman. He wrote this in 2017, but it's a very pro-Trump. Trump is draining the swamp. I think it even might bring up QAnon, but that's where my little spider sensors go. This is a concern. I love the idea of a gold-backed dollar because as a gold and silver stacker, that's going to be good for my money. But I love the idea of getting rid of the IRS. There will be something. Here's how I think. Just bottom line for me is I need to take what is good for me and what helps me. Just like Donald Trump getting elected bought me more time, and I need to be careful and wary of the rest that could be harmful to me, and not get caught up in a digital currency that becomes the only way to buy or sell, like the mark of the beast in Revelation.
Correct. Yeah. So I want to say that it felt like there was a lot clumped in, right? So when things get quote unquote like new agey, like even myself, who I guess I'm, you know, with my rhetoric, people can probably lump me into that too. But sometimes I read things and I'm like, okay, still conjecture. I try to look more at the more tangible, like things that you can smell and feel and even taste, like, you know, the things like that involve the Constitution, or bless you, or that involves, you know, patents and, you know, taxes and stuff like that, stuff that actually directly affects us day to day. Now, there's always that those terms that can be very triggering or can really just turn someone off, like the Great Awakening. I know sometimes, even for myself, it feels cheesy to say. It feels cheesy to hear sometimes. But if we take the semantics out of everything and we just kind of like address all of this as we are all in this together and we are all going to decide where we head regardless, I think that'll definitely, I mean, Jasara or no Nasara, right? Like at the end of the day, we still have every bit of say. Even if you're just one person and you feel like, you know, okay, well, my voice might not be enough, or maybe there's not enough people who agree with me. You know, like, I appreciate having conversations with people like you where we're in the pursuit of the same things, right? The ultimate, you know, I guess, as much paradise as we can achieve here on Earth, you know, until our time to go, whoever determines that. But we have like that, you have that, you're not subjective, you're very objective, where it's like, okay, this all sounds good, but that one thing right there, or those two things right there, I'm not really sure. But when we collectively join our dots and we look at this together, we can both say, okay, well, how about this? We'll take this, that, and then we'll just leave the rest because it sounds a little bit too unreal. Now, is that ideal in this specific situation? Perhaps not. But I do think, personally, whether this rolls out or not is going to be up to us. And that's why it's important that we speak about it, because we got to know it's coming. You know, I've seen the talks of it ramp up a bit, but I think we should have a lot more, you know, objectivity with it too. You know,
I didn't just you know, I didn't just pick out one or two things that I didn't like and decide this. It's something that I've
yeah, no, of course,
researched, right? It's something that I've
of course,
talked with
yeah,
other people about. But the one thing I really want to be careful of is to what extent do I accept something like this and go, well, it's good for me this way and this way and this way. And so,
Right.
but then what extent do I realize, oh, it's becoming harmful because I can't fly if I don't use this currency? That's why they're not using gold and silver. If they're saying they have enough gold and silver to back this currency, well, they can't use physical gold and silver because then they can't control us. They have to control us through a digital matter, like a chip or a code or something like that. And so that way they can say, well, you can't fly because you're not using this currency, or we don't think that you're socially acceptable and high enough on the social food chain to be allowed to buy property in this area. You're not going to be allowed to own this kind of car. Stop, please, Saoirse. I'm live. She keeps poking me on the arm. Poke,
Yeah,
poke.
that's funny.
Anyway, and
No.
so if it gets to a point where if I don't agree to using this currency, this digital currency, then I'm not going to be allowed, what you're allowed. You're going to go, well, I'm good with it, Aaron, because, I'm not reading the book of Revelation literally or something like that. And I am, right? So I don't know that you would say that. I'm just saying a person might say that. And so I'm saying, well, I am. And my concern is where that will take us. It might not be the mark yet as a digital currency. And everybody's going to go, well, it is the mark if you can't buy or sell. It might not be, because I think the ultimate mark is where we actually lose our moral understanding of who we are. We actually lose our conscience, the actual Christ-made DNA conscience, not the Christ conscience as the New Agers like to call it, but we actually lose that. We actually aren't who we were created by God anymore. And that's the final mark. But these are the steps leading up to it. And if we don't stand up to that, then we won't be part of the remnant that gets to we know that the gate is narrow and not everybody's going to make it through. But if we say yes to this, it will just kind of lead us into maybe our children saying yes to the ultimate mark that they lose their soul. Maybe not us, but I don't want to lead other people, because honestly it does say in the Bible too that those who lead those into captivity go to captivity first. So I actually wouldn't make it. So this is how serious it gets for me, is I have to base it on where I'm going to end up. I don't want to end up in eternal damnation. I want to end up with Jesus Christ, my Lord and Savior. And so this is one of those stepways. I have to be that careful. I have to watch the wording. It's really not semantics for me. It's a level of what the devil is trying to put into my life, if that makes sense.
Yeah, for sure. I think where any form of like indifference to each other's stance, I think that is always going to come from my personal reconciliation with Christianity and essentially how I, interpret it, receive it. You said something. Oh, when you said they, you mentioned they. Um, I don't know if I'm sure of who they are. Not that I'm not sure. I think I know who you're referring to when you say they, but I don't know if they are as powerful as they once were, thanks to the current administration. And me personally, I believe with the whole Q phenomenon. Um, who would implement at this point has the gumption or even the authority to, would you say, to roll out the mark of the beast, or pretty much any satanic agenda? Uh, and also, and additionally, do you feel that Donald Trump is actually draining the swamp? Or do you think that he's been successful? Do you think that he's, continuing on a great trajectory with that? Like, what are your thoughts on that, with the theys and who he's fighting and stuff like that?
Well, luckily for you, I have a whole hour-long video that I did on this, but I will tell you what I think that, and I hope I'm wrong. I want you guys to know that I'm okay with being wrong on this. A lot of people aren't okay with being wrong. I'd be totally fine with being
Yeah,
wrong about this, but here's where I stand.
yeah,
I do not believe he's draining the swamp whatsoever. In fact, he keeps people real close to him, like Fauci, who was the first CEO of Moderna, which is creating that mRNA vaccine that has never been used. In fact, there's a whole thing on Moderna and the consequences that they faced in the past by trying to push this mRNA vaccine in the past, and that it hasn't worked. It has significant side effects, especially after a second dose. Something like 80% or 90% of the people after a second dose had severe side effects. And that's the systemic side effects. We're talking about, urticaria, which is a rash of hives all over. They might have had breathing trouble. They might have had other situations that it could have been just joint pain or whatever, but it was systemic in nature. And this is the same company that Fauci was the first CEO of. And this company has been in hot water for trying to do this vaccine. But guess what the COVID vaccine is going to be? mRNA. Donald Trump has what's called Operation Warp Speed to get out 300 million vaccines by March of 2021. Well, there's 300 million people in the U.S. So that's for everybody. He wants to implement that with the military. Everybody says it's voluntary. It starts that way. It sounds voluntary until you can't go to your job or you can't enter a building, you can't go out to dinner, you can't buy groceries until you've had that vaccination. So why does Donald Trump also support Gavi, Gavi, which is gate funded? And he thinks it's super. Why does Donald Trump say, I'm not going to wear a mask, and turn around and take the knee and go, masks are patriotic? In fact, I really believe it's offensive what he's kind of turned around and done. They keep saying that Bill Barr is going to go after the governors of each state. He hasn't done anything like that. The governors still have complete control. If they want to shut us down, which they will, there's a second lockdown in Hawaii starting on the 27th. The second lockdowns are coming. You asked about that. You said some people believe there's a second lockdown coming. It's already happened. We opened our schools. Shepherd's grade school closed down after 2 days because of one positive. Why are they even testing in the first place? I'm going to tell you, I used to work in healthcare, and these people would come in and they'd go, I want to get all this STD test done. And I say, okay, let's do the ones that don't show symptoms for a long time and are possibly deadly, like HIV, syphilis, those kinds of things. I said, but I don't recommend doing herpes. And they'd say, well, I want to do a herpes test. And I'd say, well, it's not going to do you any good because you're not symptomatic. Are you having symptoms of herpes? No. Name off the symptoms. No, I'm not having any symptoms. I say, we're talking a decade ago. This wasn't 2 years ago. This was a decade ago. I'd say, don't bother with it. Don't bother billing your insurance on a test that is just done the same way. They're looking for IgG, IgM, IgG being old, IgM being new. These are immunoglobulins. Okay, I said I can find out if you've been exposed to it, but if you never have symptoms, this test is worthless. The test is worthless without symptoms. And we've got people up the yin-yang getting this test, and we've got pushing for lockdowns. We've got pushing for vaccines. Is it mandatory? Is it voluntary? We don't know. But this is what we have to watch out for. And I don't see Trump leading us to any kind of salvation. In fact, I think he's not satanic. You're right. He's not satanic. But when you look at the white hats and the black hats, that's a battle of the Luciferians versus the Satanists. For you and me, though, it looks the same. They don't like each other. So yeah, they're fighting. No, I don't think he's eating children. I don't think he has anything to do with those satanic rituals. And I believe he does hate it. But he is also on the side for you and me is still a global currency, is still a forced vaccine, still brings on his bloodline will get to bring the Antichrist, whether he wants it or not, whether he understands it's the Antichrist as a Luciferian or whether he understands it as a Satanist. He is a Mason. So is Bill Barr. These guys are still in the club. And so that's my concern is, have they really broken free? Look at Kanye West. I mean, do you think he's broken his programming or do you think he's just glitching or what? I mean, I'm curious. He's running for president.
Yeah. It's a lot of colors and shapes and you know what I mean, onomatopoeias when it comes to where we're at now, because I think we're at an impasse where it's like anything can happen. We can have arrests tomorrow. We can have negative arrests, meaning you and I, being a part of like what is that, Gladio or whatever, I forgot what it's called, but yeah, I think with Trump, and I've said this before, I've said this before, if this turns out to be like, in our worst interest, this is like the greatest finesse of all time. Because you said something very interesting. You said it's the Luciferians versus the Satanists. And for you and I, it looks the same, but, he's still bringing in his own agenda. What I've noticed is because I think it has a lot to do with my spiritual stance or my, I guess, quote unquote, religious stance. I don't know if the word binary is the word, but I think my assessment comes more on like such a wider spectrum, right? So like what I mean by that is like with Trump, he may not be one of us, like explicitly like one of us, like regular old civilian with no, like out of this world interest, outside of, what you can smell and feel and taste. But what he has done so far, and I'm very good with my judgment. But I will say, like, this transcends any task that I've ever had to, face when it comes to judgment, because of so much that you have to take into consideration, so much that you have to evaluate. And now here we are evaluating his enemies in order to gauge whether he's really for us, right? Does that make sense? Like, it's like, yeah, he might not be perfect, but he's fighting those guys. So that's enough for us to say, okay, we still got to keep an eye on him, with the hopes that he's actually going to implement things that, are actually for us. And we haven't heard him say anything explicitly about Jasara and Asara, but we have seen some of those things roll out, right? We have seen, at least in a preliminary sense, right? So right now, this is literally where we're at. Like, we're just here to see what really happens next within, his agenda. And I'm excited because I'm more on the optimistic side, and I don't just like, like you. I take my time, and I read into things that, pique my interest, and that I feel that it's very important to discuss. Like, if we absolutely have no idea what's going on with this right here, particularly with Jasara and Nasara, then we're going to be blindsided, in possibly a good way or a bad way, But I do think that with that collective consciousness, like adding the consciousness to this whole situation, or this whole proposal, this idea, I think, like I said earlier, will influence, whether we mean to or not, but will influence where we go with that, you know. Because at the end of the day, and I think about this quite often, like the elites, the globalist elites, they may have all the toys and everything, but what I've come to learn, like more than ever before, is that, it's just a few of them compared to us.
Yeah,
Like when you
definitely.
speak to regular human, it's so many more of us, and we're brilliant people. Like I used to really draw that line between the elites and us, as if, we're not both capable of doing very impactful things that not just impact our environment, but like the whole collective of the world. And I mean, if you replace one significant really really bad guy with one significant really really good guy, um you made a huge difference, you know.
I agree that, like I said, if we can take anything that Donald Trump is doing and let it, work in our favor, we need to do that. Not because we're buying into the mark or any kind of Luciferian tactic, or what. I'm not saying that he is. These are just, from my research opinion, it's possible. These are, I throw down, well, it's possible. Let's keep an eye out. But I think praying for him is utmost important. I think that we should be praying that the Lord guides him, that the Holy Spirit guides him, and that he's brave and steps out and does the right thing for all of us. These the fact that the whole conventions are being done the way they're being done, the fact that everybody's acting like this virus is actually something to be scared of is really it's infuriating to me, and it's frustrating. And we're seeing like 80% of people willing to go along with a mask mandate, and even in polls saying, yeah, now I don't know if they're polls that are like from CNN or whatever where they're
Yeah.
not real, but you've got like this large amount. I can look around and tell you that 80% of people are happy wearing a mask. They're just
Yeah,
all too eager to put on their mask and in
mhm.
virtue signal or whatever it is they think they're doing. But they weren't afraid of the flu when it killed a little girl in my kid's school. They didn't think, oh well, since that
I
happened.
say that all the time.
Yeah, and of course you and I are
Yeah.
going to agree on this. So then the question is, where does it go from here? And you said something about like, do you think it's ever going to go back to normal? And you felt, and normal being, relative. Is it going to go back to a way of where we can go to, you know, where we can go to camp, or we can sit by, we can have regular baseball games, or we can go to restaurants and not have to wear a mask. Or I mean, here it's not that bad, but some places it's really bad where nobody can get together and do anything. Like cops are being called over parties, or
Right.
electrical power is being turned off because people are having get-togethers. So in some places it's really massively bad. So what do you think? I mean, you said you had a more positive outlook. Are we just going to come out the other side and everybody's going to go, this is nuts, and we're going to have a red wave and we're going to take back over like kind of a normal control, or give us your opinion on that.
I think so. Excuse me. I think it's gonna get to a point where people are like beyond restless. I think people are gonna go to the store and you literally just want to just buy something like in and out, and the clerk is like just hysterical and all these histrionics to get you to either get out or wear a mask. I think it's gonna get to a point where it's just become way too awkward, right? Like we actually, I think it was in the 40s or maybe the 50s, maybe even earlier than that, there was a mask mandate, and it just kind of like fizzled out from what I remember reading. And I kind of feel like it won't be too long before we reach that point. Obviously, the election has a lot to do with where we go from here on out. But before I look, I just forget this one point, and this is important that you brought it up. When Trump he kind of just turned around and he put on a mask. I don't take what Trump says super literal in every case, and sometimes I might be wrong in doing that, but in particular with the whole mask thing, like I've noticed a pattern where Trump will endorse what the left I mean, it's not binary, it's a spectrum, but people who are on the left, right?
Yeah.
He'll endorse something that they'll endorse just to have them reconcile, right, with just what it is. Like, so all right, let's just talk specifically about the mask. The left, okay, we got to wear masks. A lot of people on the left, they're very, if they're vocal about it, because people who are aware, like at least somewhat politically aware, they understand the currency or the capital in having people wear masks, right? When Trump comes around and he says, you have the minions, the constituents of the left, the people I'm talking about, they'll fall in line just because, right? Like literally, okay, all right. Oh, AOC said so. All right, cool.
Mm-hmm.
Then you have Trump. He'll come through and he'll say, yeah, wearing a mask is super patriotic. This is like the new wave. Then you have those constituents. They're kind of like patriotic, like, ugh. And then it plants that seed where it's like, I don't even know if I really, truly want to wear the mask anymore. I don't know if I'm really doing this, because I genuinely want to, as opposed to, me being prompted to. So I do think that a lot of the things he does is out of tact, and I try not to get carried away and, defending him with certain things. But that was one thing in particular that, if I'm going to be completely honest, I did reconcile with that again. Like, okay, particularly, I don't know if it was you and I who spoke about this, maybe. I don't think so. But when we did speak about him, doing the flip. Oh, actually, it wasn't. I had a friend of mine, he said that this would be the perfect way to divide people, right? Like to like literally have one side, like, I mean, harp on mask, wear the mask. And then, Trump and his constituents just like, no, the Constitution. And then he turns around and says, it's patriotic. That can go either way. Like where people on the right are like, yeah, masks. And then you have people on the left, no more masks. So I don't know. I think the future proves the past. And I've seen a lot of future becoming present, proving the past, so much that I'm like still on this ride. And, it's very important, like you said, to keep Trump in your prayers. I try to keep my spirits up as much as possible because, you know, if we don't have Trump, you know what I'm saying, at least we have each other. And that's what this is all about, like having these dots that we put together. And, you know, if they come storming, you know, in my neighborhood and I just happen to, you know, get out, I'll know where to run to
You make a great
for
point.
for for refuge.
You make a great point that we have each other because it's I admitted this on Mike's his channel's called Airborne Saint in the morning. I said I admit like I've been having some fears. I've allowed fear into my heart and my mind because I don't like where I see things going, and so I've been worrying about the future. And so I what I did is I came to that community and I said, you guys, if you feel the same way, like let's come together and pray about this, and would you pray for me? And that alone just like lifted my spirits just to ask for that help and to come together.
Hmm.
So it's like you said, we still have each other no matter, and we have, of course, in my belief, I have the Lord Jesus Christ, and of course I go to the Lord in prayer all the time. But I know He wants me to communicate this to other people and to just have, Mike say, you know what, we could talk about currency like you and I did, but faith is our currency. Having faith
Yeah.
in God, that's actually going to be how we're going to be able to deal with each other. And that to say that was our currency, I was like, that's great. I need to be having better faith. The better faith I have, the more currency I have, and the more I have to work with.
Hmm.
And so, I'm glad you say that because that's exactly right. Whether we disagree or agree of Donald Trump's amount of control or what he's doing for us, what we don't disagree on is this relationship being helpful and important and coming together as friends, not trying to fight. We're not fighting about this. We're not trying to pick each other apart. And gosh, there's so many channels that do that now. They'll want to go after somebody without ever talking to the person and say, "Oh, see their symbolism, see their this." Oh, because I happen to do this one time when talking or something, and I have to tell people, I'm like, I'm not doing this. I'm not doing the 666. I just
Yeah.
accidentally got my hands moving, and I happened to put those fingers together. And it's just so easy to start
Hmm.
breaking those people down and saying they're part of. Oh, and I get told because I push back against Trump and QAnon, people decide I must be a satanic cabal myself, or I'm voting
Yeah,
for
of course.
Biden. I'm like,
Yeah.
it's like you said, there shouldn't just be two sides. It shouldn't just be right
Yeah.
wing, left wing. It should actually be, let's gosh, if I say this all the time too. I'm like, if there's so many liberals that think like me as far as when it comes to anti-vaccine or non-GMO foods or building an
Right.
Earthship or a tiny home or living off the grid,
Hmm.
and I'm like, maybe we don't have some, maybe you're doing it for different reasons than me, but let's come together and
Hmm.
you know. But I'll tell you,
Yeah.
one thing you and I definitely have in common is not just counting on something like Jacera Nacera, right, or a gold standard, but you
Yeah.
and I believe in physical gold and silver, that we should be buying that.
Yeah. 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 Very important. I'm glad you're into it because I I've
Very much. My whole
stumbled across
business.
the importance. Yeah. It's very important to invest and have a steady plan moving forward that like real security because no matter where we go from here, you still need to hold yourself down.
Real quick, I wanted to mention that Ben Schwagel in the chat said that what did he say? Let me go back up. 2 to 300 miles of the wall, only 2 to 300 of the miles of the wall has been built. And you notice how it's gone down the memory hole. Nobody talks about the wall anymore. People are reporting that they have stopped building the southern wall, and some people are reporting the building of a northern wall. I haven't seen that myself, but it's possible. And then I don't think that we're past the point of no return, though, because he says if Trump and Q result in the worst situation, which is a possibility, then it's too late to stop them. We have already been deceived past the point of no return. We have not been deceived, though. I think we're keeping an eye on things. And I think even you're not afraid to hear me say, well, here's my concerns about Trump, and then listen to them. I don't think you're afraid to
Yeah, of
hear me
course.
have concerns about QAnon and listen. You might go on the Q train and Trump train, and that's your decision, but you're willing to at least listen. And so I don't think that we will be fully deceived because we'll also know when it comes in when the book of Revelations talks about the locusts come and they're not to harm the grass or the people with the mark of God on their forehead. Interestingly enough, the mark of the Lord. Then we're not deceived. We're going to know exactly what's going on in those times, and so that's what we're trying to do is prepare, not be scared. And that's why I admit I kind of stepped into the scared, the prepared, scared. I'm like, oh, I kind of fell into the scared side for a little bit, but I'm working my way
Mhm.
back. But I'm willing to admit that so you guys can pray for me if you think about it and need that faith, that currency in faith. So I don't know if you have anything you want to respond to about that.
Yeah, no, it's in, look, if I'm no different than the leftists or the liberals that I talk crap about, and being intolerant if I don't sit around and listen to someone who disagrees with me. Um, like I used to think we lived on a ball. If I didn't listen,
Mm,
if I didn't suppress, my ego or just for a moment put aside my strongest convictions to hear the other side, I don't learn,
yeah.
But I try to be as firm as I can in my convictions because, like you don't want to follow things blindly, of course, but you don't want to follow things just to follow things. You don't want to follow things without any, because I earn my convictions. Like I'll tell you, like if, most people that know me personally, they know what I'm about because, I don't shy away from it. But when it comes to being challenged, I welcome that. I welcome that. I welcome the most, vigorous, because if I'm wrong, how would I know? Right? How would I
That's
know
right.
if I stay within my echo chamber? How would I ever know? And it's very rewarding when you go into those challenges and you either learn, which should always be something, the a result, or you're strengthened in your resolve, right? Like it's like, okay, well, I heard a lot of really good things, but I think after with all that's been said, there's still enough there for me to at least look into it, continue looking into it instead of just like accepting it as the end all be all.
It's what one of my friends he said. Not enough people keep asking questions. Not enough people in their lives want to keep asking questions. And I like to quote him and say, keep asking questions. That is something all our lives that we should be doing. And a way to know you might be wrong, the way I do it, as I pray for discernment from the Lord, I pray for conviction, and He convicts me. And that's probably also why I've been going through some trouble lately. Is in probably I believe I'm getting convicted about something. Is it big, huge? No. Is it because I think when I first turned to the Lord, all the big things were dealt with in the beginning, and now it's kind of the little like fine tuning stuff. It's like, okay, now I could just work on this little thing or that little thing. And so sometimes those fine
Hmm.
tuning days, you feel convicted and you don't feel good. You're like, oh, I don't feel good. I've been making a bad choice. So wisdom, discernment,
Yeah,
and the conviction to know these things. And I think the serenity prayer is good. It talks about that. It says the wisdom to know the difference between the things I can and can't control, but also the knowledge that I have.
yeah,
The bringing wisdom to is this right or is this wrong? And can I accept being wrong? Isn't that the biggest thing? Can I accept being wrong about this?
yeah.
You have to be able to accept being wrong.
It's extremely important. Otherwise, you'll be literally delusional. Yeah, I look at society and where we've gone wrong. I don't mean to offend anyone, but when you look at a lot of the people in charge of, very significant faculties in the grand scheme, it makes sense. It makes sense. We've been empowering people who aren't all the way there mentally. These people who have deluded themselves into believing what they're doing is just and they haven't been held accountable. And, if you don't have that gene within you to accept when you're wrong, you're gonna have problems in your life on a minor scale and in the grand scheme. Um, Trust me, I know. I would know.
Okay, so was there anything else that you were thinking about discussing that we didn't get to? I'm not like trying to rush you off of here, but I didn't know
No,
if there
not at
was
all.
more you wanted to talk about and you were
Um,
interested in having a conversation about.
well, I did want to touch up a little bit. I kind of wanted to introduce this proposal that I've pretty much drafted up and
Oh yeah, yeah.
trying to get it onto, yeah, trying to get it onto the desk of a New York uh, someone in office, you know, locally, and perhaps we can probably take it to a federal level. But it's called the Golden Square Plan, and essentially the mission is to consolidate different community building faculties to bring value to urban communities throughout New York City. So, you know, countless resources are made available on a voluntary basis with customizable benefits offered, including career and residential opportunities. So for kids, you know, you have a curriculum built in for them, and that'll be oriented towards, you know, education, skill building, and character building. And then the adolescents and, you know, the adults, they'll be able to, you know, take advantage of career development, investments, um, general skill building, and family planning, right? So essentially, it's the plan overall. It's called the Golden Plan. It creates a council of prominent representatives, all delegated to 7 sectors, and the 7 sectors will oversee, you know, the efforts meant to deliver the value to these communities. So the council will consist of, you know, spiritual educators, lecturers, academic and historical scholars, holistic health experts, real estate brokers, you know, financial investors, um, honorable military and police veterans, which is very important, engineers, builders, entertainment executives, family guidance counselors, and sports coaches. So essentially, we're taking what we have in our world on what we call the elite level, and we shrink it down to the community size, a community uh, program or whatever, like a community within a community, and it'll expand. Now, there's a whole lot of logistics and infrastructure that has to be established in all of this, but I understand that there's a lot of concerns coming out of COVID, right? So you have the health concerns. People are freaking out with the infrastructure, and you know how we go about hygiene. And New York is not necessarily the cleanest place outside and in the subway, which is a major thing because most New Yorkers, you know, whether rich or poor, they use the transportation system. And if we don't have that security, that, you know, sense of comfort in our own city, then we're not in the right direction. And like we spoke about earlier, the masks, it's not going to solve anything, right? It's just going to make things awkward. But then you also have the whole trafficking thing, right? People are reluctant to send their kids back out of school. So the reason why this proposal and it adds in that residential opportunity for people is that they can basically have a family curriculum with sports, media, financial, educating, whatever. All of this stuff, basically, you consolidate it on site. You give these families opportunities to turn their lives around. And the programs that are built into this plan will immediately impact the entire communities around it. So an example of that is what's implemented is the sorry let me find it, so sorry, is the golden greenhouse, right? And what that does is we create multiple gardens, right, per site, and we basically give free food. You know, obviously it'll be regulated in some way, but as far as, you know, giving people an opportunity to just eat free food or plant their own stuff and share it, I think that's going to bring us in a positive direction. It sounds like I'm like trying to bring back the bartering system and try to like perfect it, which is kind of not a bad idea, right? But
Well, no,
um,
free bartering
I,
is fine. Not free stuff. Free trade is good, but not just you have to be
Yeah,
careful offering free stuff because there's always people that just take advantage and they're like, cool, free stuff, and then they're
exactly.
just garbage people.
Right, which is where I had to, iterate. It has to be regulated in some sense, right? There has to be some type of economic responsibility there, but overall, I want it's really more of a spiritual, like, morale building kind of initiative as opposed to building a business, because what we're doing is, I don't want to use the word duplicate when it comes to human beings, but essentially um, create a standard, right? Like, I like to use the phrase golden standard, because the golden rule, golden standard, you have the golden plan where you create a culture that compels people to be very giving and charitable, but prioritize their individual and collective, within the family, their wealth and health in order to give to others, to pay it forward. So what I really want is for that to, get to hopefully Congress or something. I don't know, but hopefully other people catch wind of it. I know that these initiatives have already started around the world, but I want it to be super normalized, and I want, people my age, people, who came from where I came from, to have a say in their own communities moving forward. We've been promised so much for such a long time, and now we finally have an opportunity to realize, like, the government has never been really working for us. So what are we going to do about it? You know,
Yeah, I think
particularly
that's
in New York.
a good idea. There's a concern from some in the chat that say New York is going to be taken out by the asteroids coming from outer space, and that's what they're going to blame. And they're recommending and warning that you might want to get out of New York. But I hope you're a prayerful man and you pray for where you're supposed to go and where you're supposed to stay because, I talked to other people and one guy that came on Airborne Saint with me, we did a call-in thing. He said, I always thought I spent thousands of dollars. Not well, he said I probably have a couple $1,000s into my bug out plan. He goes, and then I realized that maybe I'm not supposed to leave at all. Maybe the Lord wants me to stay and help people where I'm at. And I'm like, yeah, we have to
Yeah.
determine what we're supposed to do there. If we're supposed to leave or if we're supposed to stay. There may come a time where we're to run to the hills, but it may not be that time yet for ourselves.
Yeah. 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 I don't know. I mean, I try to be as positive as I possibly can. Anything that I've achieved in life, anything that I've, like, been happy about manifesting, or whatever words you want to use, it's always been because I've kept myself in high spirits, and I've always uh, vibrated on a positive level. I attract whatever it is that I, meditate on, or not meditate, like, but like
Yeah.
meditate in the sense of, like,
Prayer is also
repeatedly,
a form of meditation as
affirm.
well. It does talk
Exactly.
about
So
meditation in the Bible. People freak out, and it's like you can actually meditate in prayer to the Lord Jesus. Yeah, don't be doing
yeah.
yoga incantations, but yeah, anyway,
But yeah,
positive
that's where
recommendation.
I'm at. Like, when it comes to what you're pulling into your life, it's all, where it all starts here and here, and combining that, and then everything in the physical around you, it starts to kind of, like, just align. I think that uh, I kind of refer to that as, like, the Holy Trinity. And there's a lot of things that I refer to as the Holy Trinity, but your mind, body, and spirit, the way you connect that, like, if your body's all ailing and messed up, you're obviously going to be worried all the time, and
Mm.
if you're worried all the time, then mentally and emotionally you're just not in the right place. So, it's like a pyramid. You got to have the three sides in order to, well, three sides, you know what I mean. Triangle, let's do triangle. You got
Or you
one,
could
you
say
take
like
one
three
side out,
legs. You could
it's a
say
little
three
triangle.
legs on the chair or whatever.
Right,
Go
yeah,
for.
exactly. So yeah. Yeah.
Well, I would think that we should pray for your success in what you're doing, especially because it comes from love and it comes from trying to help others, and which is what a lot of us are trying to do. A lot of us are trying to help others. We're trying to help, just like me and Doc Michael and Jackie, who I think is in the chat, were talking earlier about helping each other with the gold and silver. That's not just, it helps me because it's my business, but even if it wasn't, I tell people, I'm like, even if you never buy from my company, I'll still answer all your questions because it's that important to me that you understand that this is something you should have and that we get it in your hands. I don't even care who you buy it from. I'll answer the questions. I'll help you with it, whatever you need. And if you're willing to do it with my company, great. If not, please just do it. And I said that to my close personal friends. I'm like, I don't care who you buy it from, just buy it. Just make sure you have it. So it's the same way if we want to have a community where we're growing food together, helping each other build a building together. It's not a forced, the difference is communism is it's forced. Everybody has to share.
Yeah.
The difference between a community that wants to help each other is I might say, no, I can't help you with that. I'm not going to be able to help you with that one thing or whatever. But or someone might say that to me, no, I can't help you with that. But I'm still willing to go and help them do something maybe. It's more like, yeah, if you want to be a part of this system and be helpful, that's great. If you just want to live on your land and not, cool too. But if we can help each other out in that way, you're going to see more and more people want to do that. You're going to see more and more people be like, yeah, I got this. People want a purpose. They want to be helpful. They need that. That's why the powers
That's
that
true.
be don't want us to have a purpose, and they want to give us a UBI. They want us to just sit around and do art and play golf all day because then we don't have a purpose and then we'll lose ourselves and we'll like commit suicide or just be
Hmm.
worthless. Kind of like that movie Wall-E where everybody
Yeah.
just sit in a chair and doesn't have to go anywhere. So it's like
Yeah. Yeah.
if there's no purpose, we don't really even feel good about ourselves and more depression, more anxiety and more suicidal ideation. So when we're in part of a community where we feel like, hey, I can give this way, that makes us feel good. That makes us purposeful and that makes us want to do it even more and there's that secondary gratification. It's not even just primary. It's secondary because you like seeing other people feeling good and happy and blessed.
Very important. Purpose. Purpose is the major thing. I've had a lot of conversations lately with set ideations coming from people. So, um, yeah, we've got to phase into a higher morale collectively. I think that should be the focal point going into the winter time, going into next year, because after this election, a lot of answers will be, a lot of questions will be answered, and a lot of questions will be created. But we got to get ahead of that curve by being prepared and moving with love and focus, purpose.
Yeah, prepared, not scared.
Yeah, yeah, prepared, not scared.
Okay,
It's
so
always great talking.
it is, and you're easy to talk to. And I always tell you that you have the great radio voice, but I appreciate that you think my voice works well too. So maybe we're just a good team that way.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I think so. Phenomenal tandem.
Which means you'll come back on the show again sometime.
Absolutely,
And
absolutely. I
and
love
one of
it.
these days you'll start your own, and then we'll all be coming over to your channel.
Yeah, yeah. Soon enough. Soon enough. There's a few things I gotta hammer out, and then I'll be out here.
Is there anything that you wanted to talk about else? Other stuff? Anything?
Not for now. Not for now.
Nah, for
Let's
now.
let's leave it
We'll
there.
save it for
Not
next
for now.
time. Okay.
Next time. Next time.
Well, here's the deal. So since you're gonna come back again sometime, we'll try to come up with maybe a even more specific topic. We've been interested in talking about like boule stuff. We've been interested in
Yeah.
getting more specific about some of that, and I think that could be like one of the next kind of we have to might dig in a little bit and do a little bit of research, but that might be one of the next things specific maybe to
Yeah.
something that's going on. Maybe even a look at Kamala Harris or something. Anyways, it's just an idea, something to
Yeah.
think about.
Yeah. 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 I like that. I like
Yeah.
that. We call that spice on the side.
Oh, okay. Her or
We call it
something.
spice. No, 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 no. We like very interesting topics that might
Oh,
rattle people.
okay. Oh
Yeah.
yeah, it gets
Yeah.
getting spicy.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah.
Well,
Spice. Yeah.
let's get things spicy then next time, and we'll dig on some people that are currently in the whatever situation that
Yeah.
you're in.
Yeah.
Okay. So with that, I'm gonna say good night to you and thank you for coming on again, and peace and love of the Lord to you.
Yes, likewise. Thank you so much. Peace and love and
All
light
right.
and godly stuff.
All right.
Good stuff.
Good night.
Take care. Good night.
In the position of the night sky, I'm unlocatable. No equation can estimate my place in your galaxy. But my majesty is evident, and your design isn't an accident. My name proclaimed, elevated by the evidence. My fingerprints in the atoms and the elements. Planets exist through the words of my lips. The DNA helix, I drew the blueprints. I fixed the stars and the comets and the orbits. I orchestrated all these things like a chorus. These are my plans, I'm your master and your maker. You're my creation and I'm your creator. I have a vision for every organism. I have a reason for every life given. I know the end, every purpose, every plan. Hold in my hand the destiny of man. Who am I am he. In the beginning was me. In the end, you will see I'm all that there is and all that will be. Who am I am he. In the beginning was me. In the end, I'm all that there is and all that will be. What I speak manifests from the birds in the air to the trees of the forest. I know the bees and the orchids, and the fruit in the orchard is just what I've ordered. What I've made is all that you see, in the air that you breathe was given by me. Even before you're conceived, my seeds planted in your heart that you might believe. I have achieved all these things. The universe is my kingdom and I am the king. In all of nature, nothing is greater. I'm the curator and the dictator. Omnipresent, I can be every place. Natural laws that only I can break. I have control of all time and space, yet I came as a man to take your place. Who am I am he. In the beginning was me. In the end, you will see I'm all that there is and all that will be. Who am I am he. In the beginning was me. In the end, you will see I'm all that there is and all that will be. My love is intimate and infinite. I complete and exceed all your needs and requirements. You are my sheep, I'm your shepherd. And my standard is the level you'll be measured. I am the judge and the jury. You should worship me, serve me, because I am holy. I am immersed in perfection, and my glory was shown at my son's resurrection, to destroy the infection and provide the correction, a bridge and connection. You've been selected, predestined. You are reflections of my love and affection. I am the great I am. I am the Father. I am the Lion, the Lamb. I am merciful, pure and deserving. In all these things, I am perfect. Who am I am he. In the beginning was me.